You weren't supposed to notice this, but the Chris Paul signing the other day to the Los Angeles Clippers might actually have a direct correlation to the Philadelphia 76ers. Chris Paul, NBA legend, returning to LA, where he probably had the best stretch of his career for likely his final NBA season, might have an impact on the Sixers down the line. And you might ask why. What the hell does Chris Paul and the 2025-2026 Los Angeles Clippers have to do with the Philadelphia 76ers? Well, we're going to talk about that today in this video. The Clippers have seemed to go all in this offseason. And when you look at their roster, it's kind of funny where, if this was a 2014, 2015 roster, this might be a team that is projected to win 70 games. That's how loaded they are, with future Hall of Famers up and down this roster. I think we can make a pretty good argument for. But with this team, it looks like they're going all in, and it's a strategy that could come back to bite them down the line and could wind up helping the Philadelphia 76ers. When you look at Kawhi Leonard, when you look at James Harden, Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, Brook Lopez, five, future, I think all borderline Hall of Famers, maybe not Brook Lopez, but I think the other four in that list will be Hall of Famers. Brook Lopez, maybe borderline just because the Basketball Hall of Fame is so easy to get into. And then some, nice, intriguing young depth pieces on this bench as well. This is going to be a team that's looking to compete for the NBA title this year, for the Western Conference title. And I put them roster-wise kind of right up there in the mix with Denver and Oklahoma City. So I commend their, ability to and their strategy to go all in this year and kind of make one last push, because you don't know how much good basketball you have left of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden pretty much for the most part as your one and two options. And then Chris Paul, likely his last season, Brook Lopez, coming up the tail end of his career, Bradley Beal, seeing if he can revive his career here in LA. But when James Harden was traded from the Philadelphia 76ers to the Los Angeles Clippers, Robert Covington comes back in the deal, KJ Martin. But the most valuable asset, arguably, was the 2028 first-round pick that the Los Angeles Clippers traded to the Philadelphia 76ers unprotected. And for a team that's going into this season with all these veterans and a win-now mentality, what is that team going to look like a few years down the line? That could be one of the worst rosters potentially down the line in the entire NBA. And the Philadelphia 76ers could look up in just a few years and have another potential top 5 pick unprotected. So they don't have to worry about like the Sixers did this year with their pick potentially conveying over to the Thunder if it was after pick 6. But it's a situation where that pick will be the Sixers no matter what. Now, will the Sixers have that pick at their hands, use that at their disposal? That remains to be seen. That's still down the line. But it's still a very, rich asset that the Sixers have at their disposal that they could look to go out and use. They might not use it this year, but maybe even next season, and going out there and trying to potentially acquire someone. It's a good asset to have, and the Philadelphia 76ers benefit, I think, from this Chris Paul signing and kind of just ushering more veterans out on the court for that Clippers team. Takes away the chance of any potential young talent kind of walking in the door for this Clippers team. So a recent article from SixersSenses.com kind of highlights all of this and the meaning of this Chris Paul signing, parlaying as well into the other moves that they made this offseason. And as we talked about, you might be asking, what does Paul have to do with the future draft pick? The correlation, as I said, isn't solely with Paul. It's more so with the direction that the Clippers have. 8 of their 14 players are over 30 years old, and we talked about, Chris Paul, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Bradley Beal, Brook Lopez. And for as good as the Clippers may be next season, as I touched on, I think could contend, in the Western Conference as the Western Conference representative, potentially even cut down the nets and win the NBA Finals. But by the end of the 27-28 campaign, this, current group of this Clippers team will definitely have run its course. At this point, Harden and Leonard could be retired or playing elsewhere. And regardless, LA should theoretically be one of the weaker teams in the Western Conference at that point, with so many assets or, so much cap space, so many players on this roster, aging, probably past their prime, maybe having one good kind of core run left together. You don't expect them by the 2028 draft to really be there and being able to make an impact. So it's a potential huge coup there for the Sixers. And as we said earlier, maybe the Sixers look to use that as an asset and trade it. Don't even wind up having this pick, but it is something good to have in your back pocket. And I think something that kind of went under the radar in that Daryl Morey trade when they did ship James Harden out. Robert Covington, KJ Martin aren't even on the roster anymore. But this asset being able to be here is making the trade look a little less bad. I still would have rather have them kept James Harden and him still been on that roster. But when you look at this Clippers team and the future down the line, they don't really have much going for them outside of this upcoming season, I think. So that could be a huge benefit for the Sixers kind of moving forward. Who knows where the Sixers will be in 2028 as well. That's another situation to kind of look into. If so, this would be a miracle for the 76ers, trying to forecast where they'll be a year from now, with all the injuries and the injury luck, or, unlucky injuries to Joel Embiid and to Paul George. It's hard to project this far in the future, but Paul George will be off the books, and Joel Embiid will have an option for that 28-29 season. The Sixers, as we've talked about many times on this channel, I think are in a situation this year where they're still trying to bridge that gap and win now, but also kind of build towards the future. Tyrese Maxey, McCain, and BJ Edgecombe hopefully as your kind of key franchise pieces, and Quentin Grimes maybe even as a good rotational piece, and hopefully Joel Embiid still in the picture as well. But with all that being said, the Sixers have a chance to acquire lottery-level talent with this potential pick in 2028, or as I mentioned earlier, trade it, use it as an asset to go out and acquire another player. So there's plenty of variables at play that could squash Philadelphia's pipe dream. We're going to talk about why, it could, trading that pick, might actually not be the end of the world for the Clippers, because all these players are kind of, on expiring deals coming up for the Clippers, and all these guys are going to be off the book. Maybe LA goes out there and acquires some big-time free agents. They did so with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George a few years ago. We saw, where that got them, not much further, than they historically have. This Clippers team has really never been able to go over the top, but it is a situation where they're going to have cap space open up. Years down the line, are players going to want to go there? Do people want to go there? Steve Ballmer will spend the money. They got one of the newest, nicest arenas in the entire NBA that could make an intriguing, destination spot for some free agents. But when you look at the roster, their one draft pick this year, Yannick Conan Niederhausen out of Penn State, he's the only one on this roster right now that's projected to be on the roster in the 28-29 campaign. And as we said, it could be problematic for the Sixers, the 28 free agent class. When you look at it, Jokic, Giannis, Kat, Donovan Mitchell, there's a few players there that could definitely turn this back around into a winning team. But, it's no guarantee. And that's why, I think the last part of this paragraph in this article really kind of hits home, where it's, so while the Clippers' long-term future looks bleak as of now, they're capable of retooling quickly. So that raises a question, whether the Sixers want to keep this 2028 first rounder in their back pocket, or sell high on it and get it off the books within the next year or so, and use it for another player, use it to acquire more assets potentially down the line, use it to move up in the draft, something like that in that kind of scenario. But there's a few different ways to look at it. I think you got to look at it right now as this is an extremely valuable asset. This is a team that's going all in right now, and they don't really have a plan for the future. They could turn that around. They could flip that around quickly. But we have one of those quick, building block flip arounds with a potential top 5 pick, top 10 pick down the line. So it's an interesting situation to monitor. You're going to want to watch, this Clippers team this year. Obviously, it's not going to impact their draft selection this upcoming season. But if they bottom out this year, it could be a situation where the Clippers look to move off of some of these guys, move off of James Harden, move off of Kawhi Leonard, and start this rebuild kind of even earlier. And then by the time the 28-29 campaign comes around, they have a new group of players, whether it's a Giannis, whether Jokic finds his way there. For example, 2 of those guys being on the same team would be insane. But it is a situation where if this team does bottom out and they're not playing above are playing to their talent, to their ability, and it's an older group too that could severely deal with injuries throughout the season, it is a situation to monitor the direction of this Clippers franchise and going forward. But I would just keep that in the back of our mind, that the Philadelphia 76ers have this asset, have this valuable asset, and they could potentially do many things with it, whether it's they use it, whether it's they trade it, and it's going to be something to watch over the next few seasons. But, mid off season, a little kind of article here to spike some interest, maybe back into the fans, as the off season kind of winding down. The only major move left, I think, that the Sixers have to make is going out there and re-signing Quentin Grimes. I think that's the last major move we'll see. But who knows? The NBA is a drama series at the end of the day, and constantly providing entertainment. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know it's a ways out, but I don't even know if everyone knows about that pick, having that draft pick, and the potential ramifications of this Clippers franchise going down the tube after 1 or 2 years coming up here of a last dance with this core group trying to make a run at the final. So as always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please drop a like, please drop a subscribe, and we will talk to you next time here on Sixers Digest.